Hello everyone, I'm Chef Manny Uribe, one of the full-time faculty members at Triton College. Today we're going to be cooking a turkey with a side of mashed potatoes and gravy, right? So we're going to be giving you some tips and tricks that you can be using at home. You want to make sure that we take a stressful event and make it really easy and convenient for you to be prepping ahead of time, getting ready for your Thanksgiving dinner. We have our student here helping us out.
My name is Edgar Ventura. I am a HIA student at the culinary department at Triton College.
All right, so I'm gonna start off with the turkey. It's going to have a piece of plastic here holding the legs together, the thighs, right? So we're just gonna remove that. We're going to take this out and it just pops right out. Okay, so you have your breast, right? So this is where most of the meat is at, and there's really nothing in the back here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have our turkey here. Now you can do this with kitchen shears or you can do this with a nice solid knife. I don't like to use a million different tools when you can have your good chef knife do pretty much everything. So while I start cutting this, right, so you take a look at the spine, right? So it's about 2-3 fingers of the spine that's gonna go all the way back down. I'm gonna start on the right side and I'm gonna make sure that this is holding down. You wanna stand it up a little bit, right? So you're gonna take the tip of the knife, apply a little bit of pressure, start going down. Okay, so I went down on both sides. I'm gonna take this, just like anything, if it feels like you're applying too much pressure, right, move it around, turn it around, and then cut. All right. Sounds pretty scary, right? Okay, so this is going to open up the turkey. I'm gonna take this. What I should have done was remove the neck. Completely forgot. Okay, now what do we do with this, Edgar? Do we just throw this away?
Nope.
Okay, what can we do with this?
You could roast it off, make a good stock out of it.
Yeah, absolutely, right? So we want to make sure that we can make a great stock out of this, right? So we're gonna take this, we roast them off, we're gonna put it underneath the turkey itself. All right, so the next step here is you have something that looks like this. Now it's still not completely flat. So as you're looking at this, you're gonna start cutting some of this. The wishbone down here, right? So this is where the breast is. Just apply a little bit of pressure and then you pop this open, okay? So what that's gonna do, allows you to have this, okay? Now Edgar, since my hands are dirty, can you get these veggies? We're gonna put them on this sheet pan right here.
Yes.
All right, so we're gonna have just carrots, celery, onion, okay? So what it's gonna do, instead of buying a whole nother rack, so it's not sitting directly into the sheet tray, right? You wanna have your veggies. Something that's going to not necessarily burn, right? Because you want them to be spread out. The carrots are gonna act as my rack. My celery is gonna cook a little sooner than my carrots, so I'm gonna put those on top, okay? And then I'm gonna fill it up with herbs, okay? And then this is our filler, is our onions, right? So our mirepoix, which is the combination of celery, carrots, and onions, is pretty much used for everything. It's used for our stocks, right, to build our soups. So it's the foundation that's it's one of those things you should definitely have at the house all the time. Now, when it comes to herbs, right, herbs can cost, they can be pricey, right? You go to your local store, they can get a little pricey for the little package. So we do have horticulture classes that will teach you how to grow anything at home. So if you're looking for, to grow thyme, rosemary, sage, right, it's fun to learn, and then eventually saves you money. Normally, you want to have one clean hand, one dirty hand, so it allows you to grab the salt and pepper, okay? You don't want to grab your salt and pepper with your dirty hand and then use the same salt and pepper to go into your mashed potatoes, right? That's how people get sick. So we're going to start off with a little bit of salt. We're going to season this underneath, right? Now, if you did this ahead of time, another option would be is to put this whole turkey in a brine, right? Do you know what a brine is?
Yeah.
So a brine is a salted water solution. All right, so we're gonna get water, and you can add any of your favorite seasonings with water with salt in there. So then the idea is if you get 100 grams of water, you're gonna do 3% salt, right? So you have 3 grams of salt for every 100 grams of water. So what it's gonna do, it's gonna allow the turkey itself or chicken to season right internally instead of just the outside. So because we're in a hurry, we're gonna show you how to do something fast in case you're ever in a pinch, right? So we're gonna get some salt and pepper, right? So we use kosher salt here, so it allows you to season from above, right? It's a lot of times when we're cooking is by feel. So you can see it a lot of times when you cook with iodized salt, as you're seasoning, if you're seasoning too close, it's going to clump up on one side. So then you're gonna take a bite. One might be really salty, one might be really bland, right? So what we do with our peppercorns, we buy peppercorns whole, we toast them, and then we grind them. Think about the last time that ground peppercorn in your pantry was, new. So a lot of times it's just more for decoration than actual flavor. So that's why you want to make sure we take a look at your spices, right? Every 6 months or so, take a look to see how they are, right? Do they still taste like anything? So I flipped it over. I'm tucking in the wings, so that way have that. We're gonna do a little bit of salt again, salt and pepper. Once again, you can change seasonings. You can do so many different things, right? Just a quick search and you're gonna be able to find different alternatives. It's whatever you wanna do. What we're gonna do right now, it's the basic, just roasted turkey, right? And then you can take it from there. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about cooking, is whatever flavors you like to have, whatever different things you wanna combine, it's just understanding what's gonna happen from here. So we're gonna have our turkey, we're gonna take this, we're gonna pop it into our oven, okay? I'm gonna add a little bit of fat in here. So I'm gonna add a little bit of oil. That way as it cooks, it gets nice and crispy, right? Now cooking temperature, you want something that's going to be, so if you have the convention oven, use that option, right? You want the fan to be circulating, so that way you're cooking evenly, or else depending on what you got going on at the house, your oven's gonna be packed with so many different sides and everything else. So it's learning to cook with what you have, right? Use that convention oven setting. And then this at 375 will cook in about 50 minutes to an hour, right? Now every oven's gonna be slightly different. So just make sure that you check the internal temperature, all right? So that is another great tool to have, is that way you're not just waiting for the turkey to look done. Because I think that's what a lot of home cooks do, is they're worried that they're gonna serve raw chicken, raw poultry, so then they just wait until it looks cooked and crispy brown, and then they wait an extra 30 minutes, and then it ends up being this dry piece of turkey. So you wanna make sure that when you do use a thermometer, that you put it in the part that has the bone, and you want, so by the thigh, right, it's gonna be your thickest part, the breast is your thickest part, and then the bone, which is gonna take the longest time to cook, you wanna get it down to 165, right? So depending on how the breasts are looking, this is what you don't wanna dry out. So with this one, halfway, you can take a piece of aluminum foil, cover the breast over, so that way it doesn't get as hot as these. So we wanna get it to 165. I like to take it out of the oven at 160, so that way that residual cooking time ends up getting it to the 165, and we're not drying some turkey out, okay? So I'm going to get this out of the way, and then Mr. Edgar here is going to get the potatoes going. So Mr. Edgar, what do you have going on?
I'm cutting the potatoes for the mash. I'm trying to get them into equal pieces. That way they cook evenly.
You mentioned something important, right? Because I see a lot of new cooks, a lot of home cooks just cutting potatoes all willy-nilly, not really paying attention to the size, right? So it just depends. If you want something to cook very fast, you're gonna cut them smaller, right? But if you're looking for something to cook it a little longer, right? The idea is that they need to be around the same size. So let's start getting them in here. A lot of times if you go to the traditional steakhouse, right, it might just be all Idaho, right? So the russet potatoes, you have these white ones here, right? I like to do a combination of the Yukon yellow ones and the white, the russet. So I do, for this one, it's 1 pound of each. 1 pound of the russet, 1 pound of the Yukon. I'm going to start making a quick gravy. We're gonna get the potatoes going. So we're gonna add some water and a little bit of salt into the potatoes so we can start boiling them down. Now, if you're looking for anything to kind of prepare ahead of time, you can have the potatoes already peeled, maybe up to 2 days before, as long as it sits in water, right? So if you're gonna start peeling your potatoes, the common mistake that a lot of people do is peel the potatoes, let them sit in room temperature, walk away, do something else, and then 30 minutes pass by, and then you have this potato that looks like it's been sitting out for the longest time. It doesn't look appealing, right? So the goal is to make sure you have your potatoes in water and it won't oxidize, okay? So our potatoes are going for our mash, okay? So for those that have never made a gravy, it's very, very simple, okay? It needs a thickener. So we have flour and we have butter, right? Your AP all-purpose flour and you have your butter, right? So this is one thickener. It's the most common one. So it's a roux, right? So we have our butter, flour, equal parts. So we have 1 quart of stock, right? So this is our turkey stock that we've made. This is our roux. So what's gonna happen is we're gonna get our pan, we're gonna turn this on. We're going to melt the butter, okay? So as we start to melt the butter, once it's melted, then we're gonna incorporate our flour. We're gonna cook the butter flour mixture just enough so that way it doesn't taste like raw flour anymore. So while this goes, Mr. Edgar, you wanna show us what you're gonna do with your garnish?
Yes, so right here I have chives, and I usually like to pick out the ugly ones and toss them out, just because.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it happens. It's one of those things where as we buy something, right, you gotta realize when was it cut, unless you have some chives in your garden, but by the time Thanksgiving comes around, your outside garden might not be, filled with anything anymore.
Yeah, correct. And then I like to make sure that they're stacked evenly flat on my board, and I like to cut off the ends because, as you can see, they're all pretty much gray color, and what you want to have is a nice bright green color. So I cut off the tip of the chives, toss this away, and I like to do it by small amounts. That way the end product comes out nice and evenly. With a sharp knife, you always want to make sure your knife is sharp whenever you're cooking or cutting anything.
That's the key for everything.
Yeah.
You need one solid, good knife that you're gonna have sharpened, and that could be another video you can see at Triton. So as our butter is melting, you can hear it, right? So you can hear it and you can see this. So it's our melted butter. What we're gonna do is we're gonna incorporate our flour, okay? And then what you wanna do is incorporate that and keep on whisking, right? You wanna make sure that you get all of the flour and not leave anything on the side, okay? So we have our butter, our flour, okay? Now, if you really wanted to, you can actually do this ahead of time, right? So it's one of those things where you need hot roux with cold liquid, or you can do the opposite, where you have the hot liquid and you already have this already done, right? Because a lot of times, the last thing you want to do at home after a really busy day is to still make a meal that's going to be great, right? Because it takes a lot of time. So making the roux ahead of time, having that sit in the fridge, you can have it in a container, you can roll it, and that way you just cut little pieces at a time, right? Add it to your hot liquid and then we'll thicken, right? So we have about 4 ounces of roux for a quart, right? If you wanted to make it thicker, then you would do 5 ounces of roux for a quart of liquid, or 3 if you just want it to be lightly, sauce to lightly coat the pan. So this is going to cook. We're going to take this to a blonde stage. We don't want to cook this too long. If we were making a really, really dark sauce, I would take it further down so we have more of a brown roux, but we're not going to get it super dark for today. While we have that, our roux is pretty good to go. Now, if you have an allergy, if you just don't want to work with butter and flour, there are other options that you can do as a thickener. You can then take your chicken stock, your turkey stock, whatever you have, start heating it up, and you can make a slurry. So a slurry is going to be 1 part cornstarch, 3 parts water. So what you do is you mix that up, and then as you have your hot liquid, you're gonna stir in that slurry into the pot. So it's going to thicken without having the need of butter or flour. So, I mean, I've been in situations like that where sometimes we don't have butter at the house, but I still want to thicken a sauce, right? It's just finding another alternative, getting creative. And I think that's what you end up picking is is how do you start cooking without necessarily having everything in the recipe, or cooking without a recipe, right? So it's just making sure that you're able to understand why everything happens and what you can do in case you don't have something. So as I'm adding my liquid, you're gonna see how it thickens up, okay? And then you can add more and keep on stirring. And our gravy's coming together. Now for extra flavor, while this kind of goes, I'm gonna add a little bit of thyme, right? So you can take your time, you can remove the sprig out of there. I'm going to just let it sit in the sauce, and then I'll strain it afterwards. So we have our gravy working. We're gonna let this go low and slow at this point, right? If you really wanted to, you can do that ahead of time. I don't recommend doing that ahead of time with the slurry because it won't come back, it won't hold as much the next day. But with the roux, you should be fine, right? So if you have a million other things to do when you're hosting a party, when you're hosting an event, it's all about planning and how you can do things ahead of time without affecting the quality or the flavor. Right, so we had our potatoes, they've been cooking for about 25-30 minutes. Our potatoes, how do you know when they're ready?
Fork tender.
They're fork tender, right? You want to make sure that they're fork tender. So in this case, it's spoon tender. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna strain this and then start cooking them. What we're gonna do with the potatoes here is we're gonna cook with the bare minimum, right? I don't want to have another pot. I don't want to have another tool. But if you have access and if you have, right, like a food mill, something that you can take the potatoes and then, question for you, it would be a lot smoother. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the same pot, we rinse it off, right? We're gonna take 1 pound of butter, right? So this was 2 pounds of potatoes, 1 pound of butter, which sounds like it's a crazy amount, which it is, but we're going for flavor, right? We're going for something to be the rich, buttery, delicious dish, right? As we have half of that pound melting, we're gonna take our minced garlic, okay? So don't buy that pre-minced stuff. Just get some regular garlic and then chop it up yourself, right? You can do that in the morning. You can have a little machine that will chop it off for you if you need to. Melting our butter. Okay. So what's gonna happen is we needed that melted fat to go with the garlic, so that way it distributes that garlic flavor throughout, and then you don't have just raw pieces of garlic into your mashed potatoes. All right, so our butter, our garlic, if you can smell this, it smells amazing. All right, so we have that. We're gonna put our potatoes in now. Okay, be careful whenever you're putting anything into hot liquid, hot fat, right? Because the last thing you want is for it to splash and hit yourself and then burn yourself. That's gonna be a bad day. What we're gonna do is we're gonna start breaking down the potatoes here. So if you were in a hurry and then you rushed this, you took the potatoes out of the water sooner than they should have had, it's actually gonna end up costing you more time, more energy, because you're gonna be breaking down pieces of potatoes that are still raw, right? So the key is also to be patient, right? Learning to be patient. As we have that, we're gonna start incorporating our heavy cream, right? So we're gonna start adding some heavy cream in here. Okay, so this is about 2 cups. Now you can, I'm gonna do 1 cup at a time. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna stop at whatever point you feel confident with the potatoes, right? We don't wanna whip them too much. We just wanna make sure we kind of break them down, incorporate all that in there. Okay, so it's gonna start to splash all over, right? So as I have this, breaking down the potatoes, right? We're only gonna stick to the 1 cup in this one. So this would be more of a smashed potatoes, right? Whipping this together, right? I like incorporating some Parmesan cheese in here. It's gonna help thicken it up as well. It's gonna give it the nice cheesy flavor. So, a lot of fat. Okay, so as I do this, we're gonna incorporate a little bit of salt. Okay, we have our kosher salt. So it's gonna be salt to taste. So now I'm turning down, the potatoes are pretty much mashed up, right? So what we're gonna do is take it off the heat and then incorporate some of the butter, right? So this is room temperature butter. We're gonna incorporate some as we go. So it's gonna be nice, silky smooth. You don't wanna have the heat on anymore. We're letting the residual heat just cook the potatoes, right? So we have that, it's gonna melt, or else it's gonna break. You don't want oily potatoes like that. So, do you have a preference when it comes to your mashed potatoes?
I like them nice and creamy.
Okay, nice and creamy. Nice. All right. So, a lot of butter. All right. So, what was this? 2 pounds of potatoes. We ended up going with 1 cup of cream, about 2-3 tablespoons of garlic, depending on your choice. And then we're gonna finish this off with some chives. All right. So, we're gonna add some chives in here. Now, in another video, I showed everyone how to do a compound butter. So if you wanted to modify the recipe, you can always add some of the compound butter. We're gonna add some on top as well, right? So compound butter is a great thing to have, especially on Thanksgiving Day, right? Because you can just add it on top of anything. So we have our chives, okay? We have our chives, our potatoes, nice and creamy, so we have that. All right, so that we can get into a bowl, right? We have our family style dinner. Our gravy's looking great. We're gonna add a little bit of black pepper to this. Okay, a little bit of salt. Okay, and then you're gonna taste as you go, and you wanna make sure it's the consistency that you're happy with. If it's too thick, add a little more stock. If it's too thick, too thin, right? Add a little bit more of the roux if you have some on the side. So we have this. We're gonna keep cooking this down a little bit, and then we're gonna taste it. All right. So always have spoons. We're gonna add a pinch of salt. Okay. A little bit of pepper. Right, tasting as we're going. And then what we're looking for is the thickness. Well, how do you know if it's thick or not? So you can see the sauce itself thickening to the pan. You can also do a spoon test, right? So as you take this, you want to make sure you kind of rub your finger through, and then is it running through or not? And if it stays, then you're solid, right? You can determine the thickness on your gravy depending on how you want it. This is a very light colored gravy, right? Depending on what you're trying to do, the darker the gravy, the darker you want to roast the bones, okay? So we have our gravy, we have our mashed potatoes, okay? And just to top it off, just a little bit more butter onto our buttered potatoes, all right? So
that's a lot of butter.
it is a lot of butter. Okay, so we have our gravy, our mashed potatoes. Bringing the turkey back from our oven, this is what it's gonna end up looking like, right? So you wanna make sure that your turkey rests a little bit and not carving it right away, only because all the juices are going to be running out. So give it, 20, 30 minutes. But like I said, by doing it this route, it's going to be a lot faster. It's going to cook a lot sooner. So I prefer this, and then all my stuffings and then different sides will be done in another platter, or something that I can easily pop in the oven. So as my guests arrive, right, I can have everything go in. I can start carving this, and it will make it as easy as possible to host a party without any of that added on stress. So once again, if you would like to learn any of the cooking videos, just check out our YouTube. We have other videos with different sides, right? So if you wanted to do more than just this, you absolutely can. If you wanted to learn any of these items, we do offer a variety of cooking classes for anyone through CE. And if you're looking for culinary, baking, or hotel, motel certificates and degrees, check out Triton's website. So, thank you for everyone, and thank you for everything. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you all enjoyed learning to cook for your party. Thank you.